All right, step 8 or tip number 8 to teaching someone to read using phonics. Once you've gone over all the previous steps, 1 to 7, so please look at the playlist or watch the full videos that I've put together. Find good readers. So the readers that I use for my children, which worked really well, and I'm not saying they're the only readers. You have like the Oxford Reading Tree program, which you can find in libraries, public libraries in the UK, as well as many schools, but you can get the books from there. But what I use were the Peter and Jane books. Well, we call them Peter and Jane. And we use those. They're Ladybird reading scheme. And it starts with 1A. So it goes very, very slowly, builds up, the gradient, builds up the difficulty. But I found it really good. So once I got all the phonics sorted and they understood, the sounds, we started with that. Very, very simple. Peter, Jane, let's say a dog, a tree, a ball. Anyway, that worked for us. It's got the picture to go with it. We use, the plasticine, all the tips that I've showed you before, we used. And step by step, we just went through the book. Now, some people quite incorrectly could use the look and say method. And the look and say method was the other method that was introduced originally in the States after the attack on phonics by James Cattell, and other psychologists like John Dewey as well as Cattell introduced this look and say method, which is basically trying to get the person to memorize. They look at the picture and then memorize a symbol. So they were not using phonics. They were not deciphering and using the sound to actually read. They were trying to memorize what the word, what that word, just taking a picture of it literally and saying, oh, that's Peter. And then hopefully remembering it later on. But obviously the look and say method is incredibly destructive. And this has been proven many, many times. You should read that book on this. There's 2 books on the subject. Well, there's more than 2 books, but there's some very famous American books called Why Johnny Can't Read, and then Why Johnny Still Can't Read. So if you want to look into that, by all means do so. But the phonics method is definitely the best method. And I was discussing with other individuals, and actually some viewers put some comments on the some of my other videos on the subject. And countries like Russia use phonics. When I learned French, because I learned French sort of to read in French first before I read English. I don't speak so much French anymore now, but it was a phonics system. So I think in many, many languages, it is what's used. Can't comment on Chinese because they use a slightly different system. They don't have an alphabet, so I don't know how that works. But anyway, here we go. So, using phonics, you just get through the books. And I found the Peter and Jane books to be really good, and there's 30 of them. And by the time, I think it's about 30 of them, and by the time I got to 30, all my kids could read with that. Then after that, you keep practicing, obviously. So, ready for the next tip.